Good day, sports fans, and welcome to lecture number 4 of Cricket South Africa's Level 1 umpiring course, brought to you by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mukorosi, and as usual, this evening my batting partner will be Abdullah Steenkamp. I will be taking you through laws 19 and 20, and Abdullah will take us through laws 21, 22, and if there is time, law 23 as well. Tonight is a jam-packed session, and I am looking for a lot of interaction with all of you. We've got plenty of videos to keep you entertained, as well as scratching your heads as to what decision to make. So stay tuned. Get ready on the chat box to interact and answer the questions that we will be firing your way. Just a heads up for those of you who have never attended one of our lectures, your microphones and cameras are currently inactive while we present. We will present for an hour and a half, maybe up to 1 hour and 45 minutes today. If you have any questions on the content that we are presenting, please type it into the chat box and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. Once we've gone through all the questions in the chat box, then we will open the floor up to any more questions by candidates putting their hands up. At that stage, I will have activated your microphones and cameras, and you will, when prompted, please unmute your microphone, and you may also put on your camera for your question. As mentioned, we might go over time because of the content this evening. You're welcome to leave at any time. This lecture is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel later tonight or latest tomorrow morning. So let's get into today's content, starting with Law 19, boundaries. First thing that we have to do as umpires is determine the boundary of the field of play. Law tells us that before the toss, the umpires shall determine the boundary of the field of play, which shall be fixed for the duration of the match. You cannot change a boundary during the match, especially in more-day cricket. You can't have a shorter boundary for day 1 and a longer boundary for day 2. It needs to be the same throughout the duration of the match. The boundary shall be determined such that no part of any side screen will at any stage of the match be within the field of play. How is the boundary identified and marked? Law tells us that where practical, the boundary shall be marked by means of a continuous white line or by an object in contact with the ground. If the boundary is marked by a white line, the edge of the line nearest to the pitch shall be the boundary. So if at any time the ball comes into contact with any part of the boundary line, then we know that a boundary has been scored because the edge of the line nearest to the pitch is the actual boundary. So regardless of how thin or thick your boundary line or rope might be, the edge of the line nearest to the pitch is the boundary. An object such as a flag, post, or board used merely to highlight the position of a line marked on the ground must be placed beyond the boundary, and it is not itself to be considered as the boundary. We will have a few graphics to illustrate this point later in the slides. So here's the first graphic showing us that the inside edge of the boundary line is the actual boundary. A fence may be used to be the boundary. Similarly, the inside edge of that fence would be the boundary. A rope may also be used to mark the boundary, and again, the inside edge of that rope will be the boundary. So if the ball lands on the full anywhere on the rope, then it is a boundary 6. If, however, the ball touches the grass and the rope at the same time on landing, that will be a boundary 4. But if it lands on the full on the rope without touching the grass, then that would be a boundary 6. Here we see posts that are merely indicating where the boundary line is. Those are not the boundary itself. The line is the boundary. The posts and the flags are merely indicators of whereabouts the boundary is. If the boundary is marked by means of an object that is in contact with the ground, the boundary will be the edge of the grounded part of the object which is nearest the pitch. As mentioned, the rope is the best example there. Where there is no white line or object providing continuous marking, objects such as flags, posts, or boards may be used to mark specific points on the boundary. The boundary shall be the imaginary straight line on the ground joining the 2 nearest marked points. So if you have flags marking the boundary and no white line, those flags then are the boundary. And the way that we need to connect the flags is not by a curved line. It is straight lines, imaginary straight lines between those flags. Not very easy if you're an umpire 50, 60 meters away from the boundary to judge whether or not a ball has been fielded within the boundary or if the fielder touched the ball while grounded outside of the boundary. We unfortunately have to rely on the honesty of the fielder if we don't have the luxury of television replays to make that decision. A boundary that cannot be identified shall be determined by the umpires before the toss. So if, for example, you arrive at a field and you've got absolutely no rope, no line marked out, no flags, no fence, then you need to make a plan. Quite often I've seen coaches take cones out of their coaching bag, and those cones are used to mark the boundary all the way around the field. The game must go on. An obstacle within the field of play, how do we deal with that? The law tells us that it shall not be regarded as a boundary unless so determined by the umpires before the toss. Later, we will see a video of a tree which is about 4/5 to the boundary inside the field of play at Pietermaritzburg Oval, the ground where KwaZulu-Natal Inland's professional men's side, the Tuskers, play their provincial matches. So the custom at Pietermaritzburg Oval is that if the ball hits any part of the tree, whether along the ground or in the air on the full, it will be called a boundary four, regardless of how high up in the tree the ball hits the tree. Even on the full, even if it would have gone over the boundary rope had the tree not been there. So what you do as an umpire when you get to a field where there is an obstacle within the field of play, you do not make up your own rule. Obviously, cricket has been played there long before you have come to umpire there. You ask the home captain what the tradition is in terms of judging that obstacle as a boundary or not. And if it is a boundary, is it a boundary four or is it a boundary six? Quite often at school fields, you get rugby poles inside the field of play of a cricket field. And the normal law or the custom usually is that if the ball rolls and hits the poles, then it will be a boundary four. But if it hits the poles on the full, then it will be a boundary six. This is usually when the rugby poles are very close to the boundary. However, it does and could differ from field to field. So ask the question and apply the local custom. What you should never do is to say if the ball hits the rugby poles on the full, but below the crossbar, then it should be four. And if it's above the crossbar, then it should be six. You will get yourself into all sorts of trouble trying to watch the ball so closely from 50 meters away to see where exactly on the rugby poles the ball has hit. So keep it simple, and it usually is a simple custom that the home side will let you know about. What happens when a person or animal comes onto the field of play and that person is an unauthorized person? So while the ball is in play, law tells us that it shall not be regarded as a boundary if the ball hits that unauthorized person or animal who has come onto the field of play, unless the umpires determine otherwise at the time that contact between the ball and such a person or animal is made. So what the law is trying to tell us here is that if the ball is hit so hard and the interception by the unauthorized person or animal is very close to the boundary, and if it was not for that interception, the ball would have made it to the boundary, then you can, even though the ball doesn't make it to the boundary, you can signal boundary four if it had gone along the ground. This decision shall be made individually for each separate occurrence. There isn't a blanket rule. The blanket rule is that you need to make a decision based on the circumstance of that particular delivery. So let's have a look at a delivery that was hit into the tree at Pietermaritzburg Oval. And the commentators explain it pretty well as to why this was a boundary four and not a boundary six.
It's a single that was brilliantly timed. There we go. That's gone, Miles. Oh. But it might only be four if it touches the tree. That's the biggest four you'll ever see. Christo?
Ahmed, cut the trees down here.
That's a 100-meter four.
Cut the trees down, brother.
The best part is when the analysts do the projection like they do in golf, it will be showing a carry of 110 meters, but it's only 4 runs.
The biggest four I've seen. Ahmed.
Oh.
Boast really is coming and he's
Well,
really taking the
it brings
game
me
by the
back to
scruff.
my point. You know what he's about. You saw it yesterday. You know that anything.
So we saw there that the home side, the Tuskers are fielding. This was a T20 provincial match where South Africa under 19 was invited to the tournament. And as soon as that ball hit the tree, and it was quite high up in the tree, it's not that easy to see, but the fielder at long on, knowing the custom, signaled to the umpire boundary 4 because it had hit the tree. Even if it was the highest point of the tree, you will have seen that the tree is inside the boundary. And so there needs to be a decision as to what is the boundary when the ball hits the tree, whether on the ground or in the air. And the custom at Pietermaritzburg Oval, as I mentioned earlier, is that it is a boundary 4, whether along the ground or in the air, even the highest branch or the highest leaf of the tree, if it is hit, the umpire will not signal boundary 6. They will, as my colleague Katson Tuli did here, signal boundary 4. Just another little piece of umpiring fieldcraft. We see here that because the ball has hit the tree, when it comes back to Katso asks the bowler for the ball, and he then checks the ball that it has not been damaged. So here you will see him inspecting what the ball looks like, and he's happy that it's still in shape, and now the next delivery can be bowled. Okay, a little bit of extra umpiring technique tip for you there. So runs scored from boundaries. I'm sure we all know that there are boundary 6s and boundary 4s. Let's look at the 2 definitions as per the law. Law tells us that a boundary 6 will be scored if the ball has been struck by the bat. And that's quite an important phrase. And is first grounded beyond the boundary without having been in contact with the ground within the field of play. This shall apply even if the ball has previously touched a fielder. So if a fielder tries to take a catch on the boundary and it bursts through the hands and goes over the boundary without landing anywhere inside the field of play, that will be a boundary 6. But remember, the important point here is that the ball has been struck by the bat. Boundary 4 definition. Law tells us that a boundary 4 will be scored when a ball that is grounded beyond the boundary, whether struck by the bat or not, was first grounded within the boundary, or has not been struck by the bat. So, having listened to those 2 definitions, and I'll put them back on screen, I have a scenario for all of you to please involve yourselves in answering. And this actually happened at the Abu Dhabi Sixes or the Dubai Sixes about 5 or 6 years ago before COVID. Bowler bowls the ball, and he is a fast bowler. and the ball is a short pitch delivery, also known as a bouncer. The ball bounces quite steeply. The batter goes on the hook shot. He misses the ball with his bat. It goes past the bat. It does not touch the bat. It ricochets off the top of the batter's helmet and flies over the boundary and lands for the first time in the stands. What do you, as the bowler's end umpire, signal? So I will repeat that particular scenario. And before you answer in the chat box, I want you to write or type 19.1, because I'm going to have a few scenarios that you need to answer. This one is 19.1. It's law 19, and it's the first scenario 19 that I want you to answer. So the scenario goes as follows. Fast bowler bowls a bouncer. Striker attempts a hook shot, misses the ball with his bat. The ball ricochets off the top of the batter's helmet and flies over the boundary into the stands without touching the ground within the field of play. What will the bowler's end umpire signal? So before you type your answer, type in 19.1, and then you type the signals. There's more than one signal, the signals that the umpire must signal. Okay, that is our first quiz question for this evening. Law goes on to tell us that when a boundary is scored, the batting side shall be awarded whichever is the greater of the allowance for the boundary, the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant the boundary is scored. So what does this mean? Way back in the mid-90s, the grounds in Australia and the boundaries in Australia were a lot bigger than they are now. So the Melbourne Cricket Ground and the Sydney Cricket Ground, for example, those are really big fields, and they still are big stadiums, but boundaries have been brought in over the years so that the scores are higher and batters are hitting more boundaries for the excitement of the crowd. It's a batter's game after all, they say. So back then, what you often found, especially in test matches where you had maybe a 7-2 offside field, so only two fielders on the leg side, if a batter were to hit a flick through mid-wicket and the batters run while the ball is trickling towards the boundary, if they ran 5 and the ball crossed the boundary when they were just about to complete the 5th run, so they've crossed for the 5th run but haven't yet completed it, law tells us that they will not score boundary 4. Law tells us that they will score the greater of the allowance for the boundary, which is 4 runs, or the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant of the ball trickling over the boundary. So I've never seen it happen, but Abdullah tells me that he saw it happen back in the day in the mid-90s in Australia, where 5 runs were awarded by the umpires because 5 runs were attempted and they had crossed for the 5th before the ball went over the boundary. I doubt you will see it with all the boundaries so far in this day and age. The scoring of penalty runs by either side is not affected by the scoring of a boundary. And later in these laws, we will look at how penalty runs are awarded and for what reasons. Let's go on to watch our first video of the evening, which is to do with boundary catching. And again, over the years, this has evolved tremendously in terms of how fielders are able to take catches right on the boundary. Even when they go outside of the field of play, they can still complete a catch. Let's see how.
Boundary catching. In cricket, a catch is considered to be fair if the fielder is within the field of play and the ball hasn't touched the ground before he or she catches it. The fielder must have complete control both over the ball and his or her own movement. Can a batsman be caught over the boundary? Well, this being cricket, the answer is yes and no. If the fielder catches the ball like this, with part of the body grounded outside the field of play, then the lucky old batsman is not only not out, but also scores a 6. However, if in the same situation the fielder has leapt for the ball from within the boundary, but not from outside it, caught it whilst airborne over the boundary, but managed to throw it up in the air before touching the ground, he or she can then step back into the field of play to complete the catch. It doesn't matter if the fielder throws it to a teammate or completes the catch on his or her own. In this scenario, the same batsman who just scored 6 would in fact have been out. As they frequently say, it's a funny old game. For Oodle's more details on this subject, take a look at Laws 19 and 33 in MCC's The Laws of Cricket.
So these animation videos we'll be seeing a lot more of in the coming lectures. They are available on the Laws of Cricket app. The course material email that I send out on a regular basis, every time I send a lecture reminder, right at the bottom, you will see links to download the presentation that you are watching, as well as the Laws of Cricket app. This is what it looks like. It's the blue icon, which is the law book. And when you open it, that's what it looks like. And you can see here that there are animations for you to watch, and all the laws of cricket are available in the app in your pocket at any time. There's also a quiz that you can go through in your own time that will probably help you revise for this exam. So for those of you who don't have that app, please go ahead and download it. So now that we've seen the theory behind boundary catches, it's time for quiz question number 2 for this evening. And it has to do with a boundary catch. And I'm going to play this boundary catch without sound because the commentators do a great job in describing the law and whether it is a catch or it is a boundary 6.
Bound.
I'm sure you've all seen it. It had cricket fans around the world in huge debate when it happened, I think now 2 years ago in the Big Bash. Here we go. No sound, just watch the visuals. Okay, so you've seen it for the first time. It will replay again, and I'll talk you through it. The fielder takes the catch within the field of play, throws it up goes out of the field of play. Whilst he's out of the field of play, he jumps and then makes contact again with the ball while he is in the air. So at no time is he in contact with the ball while he is grounded outside the field of play. And he tosses the ball back up expertly, walks back into the field of play, and completes the catch. So write in the chat box, please, 19.2 and your answer to the quiz question. Is it a boundary 6 or is it out court? 19.2, boundary 6 or out court? We will go through all of these scenarios after Abdullah's presentation. Overthrows or a willful act resulting in a boundary. If the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, the runs shall be scored. Any runs for penalties awarded to either side, penalty runs always stand. And remember that a wide and a no ball are defined as penalty runs. The allowance for the boundary shall stand. Usually an overthrow is a boundary 4. I've never seen an overthrow that resulted in a boundary 6. What will also count are the runs completed by the batters together with the run in progress if they had already crossed at the instant of the throw or the willful act. Some of you might be wondering, what is a willful act? We've got a video to show you the best example of a willful act that I've ever seen. And note that it is not penalty runs that are awarded by the umpire for the willful act. Listen carefully to the commentators, and I will explain it at the end as well.
Started at 15:39. Calls for a single, but the Indians want the ball to go to the boundary. And it will not reach there, will it? Yes, it does. Just has it. Oh, he pushes it over. And signals boundary, 284 for 9, and it'll bring... interesting here. Will that be 5, Robin?
I think so. I think if you're seen to deliberately kick the ball over. And I think that's what Steve Davis is checking now.
South Africa won't mind this. This is time being wasted. These are crucial moments. 5 signal because he's kicked over. The ends will change. Tony starts altering the field. Started at 15:39.
So the scenario was that Hashim Amla was batting with Morne Morkel. Hashim Amla being a number 3 bat and Morne Morkel being the number 11 batter for this particular innings. It was the last ball of the over. Hashim Amla wanted to keep the strike, so him and Morne Morkel ran 1. And of course, the Indians wanted a boundary 4 so that the 2 batters would stay at their original ends, and then Morne Morkel would face the next over, which would be bowled from this end. The ball didn't reach the boundary. It stopped millimeters before the boundary cushion. Virender Sehwag, not knowing this law, kicked the ball over the boundary cushion, and you saw him signaling boundary 4 to the umpires. The umpires were very sharp to check, and the TV umpire told the on-field umpires that they need to signal boundary 4, but because of the willful act, there was a single completed before the willful act. So law tells us that if there's a willful act that results in a boundary, the boundary will count, and any runs completed or having crossed before at the instant of that willful act. So one run was completed before the willful act and the boundary will count. So you saw Steve Davis signal 5. He didn't signal 5 penalty runs. He signaled 5. For clarity, not to confuse the scorers, he should have just shown the back of his hand to the scorers, because Abdullah went through the signals on lecture number 1. If you signal 5 with your palm facing the scorers, they might think that you're signaling buys. Okay, so the correct signal there would have been boundary 4, but 5 runs in total. And of course, Hashim Amla would now be at the other end to face the first delivery of the next ball. I hope you guys have now understood what the law refers to when they mention a willful act by a fielder resulting in a boundary.
Started.
Next, we're going to have a video of probably the most famous overthrows in cricketing history. And unfortunately, there was a mistake in this particular incident. It was, of course, the World Cup final 2019, England against New Zealand. Let's see the whole story unfold.
Hello and welcome to the Cricket Digest channel. World Cup final match saw one of the most thrilling finish ever witnessed in an ODI match. However, an overthrow in the 50th over of England innings has sparked the debate. A throw from Martin Guptill deflected after hitting Ben Stokes, who was diving to save his wicket, and the ball crossed the boundary line. Many people were confused about how an overthrow is valid after the ball touches the batsman. Point to be considered here is, everyone in the field, including the batsman and the umpires, are considered as part of the play, and the fielding side has to take this into consideration. Hence, the ball getting deflected from either a batsman or an umpire will not be called a dead ball. However, if a batsman makes deliberate contact with the ball, or if he deliberately comes in the way of a throw, then the ball will be immediately called dead and the batsman will be given out, obstructing the field. But in the case of Ben Stokes, he had come in the way of throw, but he did not do it deliberately. He was running hard to save his wicket and he did not make deliberate contact with the ball either. It looks unfair to the fielding side in this case, but one should also take into consideration that catching after the ball hits either an umpire or a batsman is valid. Hence, allowing overthrow was well within the laws of the game. But there was a mistake committed by the umpires in this incident. They awarded 6 runs, whereas only 5 runs should have been awarded. According to Cricket Law 19.8, if the boundary results from an overthrow or from the willful act of a fielder, then the runs scored shall be allowance for the boundary, which is 4 runs in this case, and the runs completed by the batsman plus the run in progress if the batsman had already crossed at the instant of the throw. Ben Stokes and Adil Rashid had completed the first run, but they had not crossed for the second run at the instant of the throw. Hence, only 1 run should have been awarded for running, and in total 5 runs should have been awarded. Law further states that if the batsman had not crossed at the instant of the throw, then they should be sent to the end they have left. Meaning, in this case, Adil Rashid should have been sent to the striker's end and Ben Stokes should have been sent to the non-striking end for next delivery. If this law was applied properly, then the New Zealand team would have had a good chance to win the World Cup. Do you feel any different? Do let us know in the comment section.
Expertly narrated by the Cricket Digest. Point to note there is that even the best umpires in the world do make mistakes. And at the time, they didn't know they'd made a mistake. Murray Erasmus has told us the story of the aftermath of this incident. He obviously stood with Kumar Dharmasena in that final. And only the next morning at breakfast, when a very angry New Zealand official confronted them, did they know or find out that they had made a mistake. So ladies and gents, very important for all of us to know our laws, that we can remember them and apply them correctly at high pressure environments when it counts the most. We all have the opportunity to learn from the mistake of others, and we shall all become better umpires for learning from all of our mistakes. That is law 19 done. The next law that I am taking you through is law 20, and we'll have a couple of more quiz questions for you in the dead ball. So what's important about the dead ball to know first and foremost is that the ball can either automatically become dead under certain circumstances, and in other circumstances, we as on-field umpires need to call and signal dead ball. So the law first takes us through the circumstances where the ball automatically becomes dead. The ball automatically becomes dead when it is finally settled in the hands of the wicketkeeper or of the bowler. And this is a judgment call that the bowler's end umpire should make, whether the ball is finally settled. The ball becomes dead when a boundary is scored. That's pretty straightforward. And also pretty straightforward is the ball becomes dead when a batter is dismissed. In baseball, you are allowed what's called double plays, where you can get two or more batters out in the same delivery, but cricket does not allow for that. Why? Because as soon as one batter is dismissed, then the ball becomes dead. Whether played or not, when the ball becomes trapped between the bat and the person of a batter, or between items of his or her clothing or equipment, the ball automatically becomes dead. Not all cricketers know this law. So sometimes if you have a close-in fielder and they see the ball comes off the bat and then gets stuck between the flap of the pad and the thigh of a batter, they might try to run towards the batter to try and claim the ball and claim a catch. No, law tells us that as soon as that ball becomes trapped between the person of a batter and his or her equipment, then the ball automatically becomes dead. So if you do see a fielder running towards the striker to try and claim a catch when the ball is trapped, then you must call and signal dead ball. Whether played or not, if the ball lodges in the clothing or equipment of a batter or the clothing of an umpire, it automatically becomes dead. When a player returns to the field without permission and comes into contact with the ball, then the ball automatically becomes dead. Again, this is the law that not all players are aware of. So good umpiring practice would be to call and signal dead ball if that happens. If there is a case of illegal fielding, then again, the ball automatically becomes dead. Not all players will know this law. So once again, good umpiring practice would be to call and signal dead ball. Importantly, in those scenarios I've just mentioned, that ball shall not count as one legal delivery in the over. It will need to be rebowled. When the ball goes through the legs of the wicket keeper and goes on to hit the helmet that is placed behind him on the ground, then the ball automatically becomes dead and 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the batting side. In the two scenarios in point number 6, 5 penalty runs are also awarded to the batting side. But here we're just dealing with the dead ball law. Again, you might not get everybody on the field seeing the ball hitting the helmet behind the wicketkeeper. So either of the umpires, whoever sees it first, should call and signal dead ball when the ball hits that helmet placed behind the wicketkeeper. And obviously, when the match is concluded, then the ball is automatically dead. Quite importantly, neither the call of over nor the call of time should be made until the ball is dead. Do not be in a rush to call dead ball. Wait to ensure that both the batting side and the fielding side have considered the ball to be dead before you consider it to be dead. That is how I judge whether the ball is finally settled or not. Law tells us in 20.1.2 that the ball shall be considered to be dead when it is clear to the bowlers and umpire that the fielding side and both batters at the wicket have ceased to regard the ball as in play. And whether the ball is finally settled or not is a matter for the umpire to decide. So let's have a look at quiz question 20.1. It involves Alex Carey and Johnny Bairstow at a very loud and untraditionally raucous Lord's cricket ground. It happened last year in the Ashes test match. I'm sure you've all seen it. So watch this scenario. I'm sure you'll all get it right. And tell me if Johnny Bairstow is out run out, or is he out stumped, or should the umpires have called dead ball? So type in the chat box 20.1 and then you will either fill in dead ball or run out or stumped. Let's watch the video.
Singing out, same old Aussies, always cheating. There were ugly scenes at the home of cricket as Australians left the field at lunch on the final day. The normally genteel long room reached boiling point as the members vented their disgust.
Some of the stuff that was coming out of the members' mouth was really disappointing, and I wasn't just going to stand by and cop it. I just talked to a few of them throwing out some pretty big allegations, and I just called them up on it.
This was the incident that sparked the fire. Oh, now this is going to be interesting. Before the ball had been deemed dead by the umpire, quick-thinking keeper Alex Carey caught his English counterpart, Johnny Bairstow, napping. The stumping was certainly within the rules of the game, but whether it was within its spirit is now at the centre of furious debate.
If the shoe was on the other foot, I would probably just have to have a little think around the sort of whole spirit of the game and things like that. So, look, it's happened, it's out.
Is it going to affect relations between the teams?
Well, I can't imagine we'll be having a beer anytime soon, if that's what you're asking.
The Australian captain defended Carey's actions and the decision not to withdraw the appeal.
I thought it was totally fair play. That's how the rule is. I know some people might disagree.
You see Johnny do it all the time. He did it day one to Davey Warner. He did it in 2019 to Steve. It's a really common thing for keepers to do.
Right, so that is your next quiz question. Type in 20.1 and either dead ball or run out or stumped. We will discuss at the end of the presentation. We've dealt with when the ball automatically becomes dead. Now we are going to look at where the law requires umpires to call and signal dead ball. Law tells us that either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when intervening in a case of unfair play. Law 41 is all about unfair play. As mentioned, we don't go through Law 41 in this course because it is not examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 1 exam. However, it is in our slides. So that presentation that you've downloaded in your own time, you can go through Law 41 and Law 42. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when there is a possibly serious injury to a player or umpire. And the key word here is serious injury. And that will be the subject of our next quiz question. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when leaving his or her normal position for consultation. If we need to consult to discuss whether or not a catch carried to a slip fielder, maybe me as the bowler's end umpire, my view was obstructed by the bowler's follow through. Abdullah at square leg might have had a better view. We don't have the option of a television replay because it's a club cricket match. We would come together and discuss what we both see before making the decision. Before leaving my position to meet up with Abdullah to discuss, I would call and signal dead ball and also request the ball from the fielding side. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball when one or both bails fall from the striker's wicket before the striker has had the opportunity of playing the ball. Not the non-striker's wicket, but when one or both bails fall from the striker's wicket before the striker has had the opportunity of playing the ball, either umpire should call and signal dead ball. The umpire in the best position to see that is the striker's end umpire, because sometimes the bowler's end umpire's view of the stumps and the bails at the striker's end are blocked by the striker. If the striker is not ready for the delivery of the ball, and if the ball is delivered, makes no attempt to play at it, the bowler's end umpire will call and signal dead ball, provided that the umpire is satisfied the striker had adequate reason for not being ready. And of course, that ball shall not count as a legal delivery in the over. We'll have another quiz question related to that particular point. So let's watch quiz question 20.2. You can start typing 20.2 into the chat box. And I want you to tell me if you consider this a serious injury and would call and signal dead ball, or would you allow play to continue and the run out to stand? I'm going to play it with no volume. And at the end of the video, I will need answers from all of you, please. So what we'll see in the replay is that the ball lifts more than the batter thought it would. It hits his glove. He wrings his hand in discomfort and then walks out of his crease after signaling to the physio to come on for help. The fielding side noticed that the batter is out of his crease and proceed to run him out. So, Mohammed Wasim against Ireland, is this a dead ball for a serious injury, or are you allowing play to continue and the run out to stand? This is quiz question 20.2. Please type in 20.2 and type in dead ball or type in run out and hit enter to send your answer. We will discuss all of these quiz questions at the end of the presentation. Last one quiz question that I've got for you today is the Scottish spin bowler, Mark Watt, bowling, as you can see in the picture here, 2 meters behind the bowling crease, just in front of the umpire. Let's see what happened against Khalid Kale.
And bowling from an extended distance, as far as Khalid Kale was concerned. That was a bridge too far.
I'm not sure about that, America's dead ball given.
Hey, no, you can't have 2 in a row.
Well, Mark Watt's not happy, and he says, how's that? It's been signalled dead ball by the umpire. Richie Berrington's come across, and Matt Cross as well. That's the second time in the over.
Well, the batter's looking up, he's ready, and to me, that is a legitimate ball. The ball is live. As soon as the batter has placed his bat down and faces up, looks up to the bowler, he's ready to go.
So, quiz question 20.2. Out bowled or dead ball? Please submit your answers now. We will go through all of these quiz questions at the end of the presentation. A few more scenarios for us where the law requires us to call and signal dead ball. When the striker is distracted by any noise or movement or in any other way while preparing to receive or receiving a delivery, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. This shall apply whether the source of the distraction is within the match or outside of it. The ball, once again, shall not count as a legal delivery in the over. When there is a deliberate attempt to distract the striker or deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of either batter, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball, and the batter shall not the ball shall not count as a legal delivery in the over. If the bowler drops the ball accidentally before delivery, in his run-up, the ball just falls out of his or her hand. If that happens, then either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. If the bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before the bowler reaches his or her delivery stride, either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. This could happen perhaps if you have a batter like David Miller who stands far outside of his crease when facing a delivery. The bowler might think that because the batter is outside of his crease, they can attempt to run the striker out. You can attempt to run the non-striker out, but this law disallows you attempting to run the striker out unless, of course, they are attempting to steal a run. But if the likes of David Miller are taking guard outside of their crease and getting ready to face a delivery, you as a bowler cannot throw the ball at the striker's end. If the bowler does so, then either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. This is before entering his or her delivery stride. If the ball does not leave the bowler's hand for any reason other than attempting to run out the non-striker, then we shall call and signal dead ball. Sometimes the bowler realizes that their run-up is not correct. They will still go through the act of the delivery stride and the delivery motion, but will not release the ball, that is when we call and signal dead ball. If either umpire is satisfied that the ball in play cannot be recovered, we do not call lost ball anymore. We call and signal dead ball. This is if the ball is within the field of play but cannot be retrieved. An example of this is if there is a snake on the field of play and the ball goes towards that snake. None of the fielders would want to go and grab that ball. So the umpires, to prevent the batters from running up and down endlessly, would call and signal dead ball. If either umpire considers that either side has been disadvantaged by a person, animal, or other object within the field of play, then we call and signal dead ball. So remember earlier in the boundary law, I mentioned that if the ball is hit very hard towards the boundary along the ground and then a dog or an unauthorized person enters the field of play right next to the boundary and stops the ball from going over the boundary, then we would have to judge whether or not that ball was going to go over the rope. And if we felt that it would have gone to the boundary if it wasn't for the interception by the dog or the unauthorized person, then we signal boundary 4. This law tells us that if that interception by an animal or an unauthorized person is maybe 20 meters from the bat, so it is still 40 meters or 50 meters from the boundary, we don't know if it was going to go for 4 or not. The batting side will be disadvantaged because they're not getting as many runs as they should. The fielding side could be disadvantaged because they are unable to effect a run out that they possibly could have. So here the law tells us to call and signal dead ball in that scenario. If the striker attempts to play the ball, but no part of his or her person, whether grounded or raised, remains within the width of the 3.05 meter pitch, then we need to call and signal dead ball. And if we are required to do so under any of the other laws which haven't been mentioned here, then we will also call and signal dead ball, and we will come across 1 or 2 more scenarios in later lectures. That is my mouthful for this evening. Abdullah, I've taken an hour and 3 minutes. Over to you. Let's see how fast you can go through your 2 laws and if you can get to the 3rd one. And then we will discuss the quiz questions afterwards.
Tom, unfortunately, I have my fast bowling spikes on. I left my spinner spikes at home. So I'm definitely bowling fast this evening. And it will, I will definitely take 4 minutes per over. Good evening to you and good evening to the rest of the attendees. So I'm kicking off with the no-ball law. And in covering the no-ball law, we are going to cover instances according to the laws of cricket that are seen as no-balls. Yes, I know there are many playing conditions across the world that if certain things happen, like fielding breaches, not enough fielders in the circle as an example, that those are also called no balls, but those are no balls under the playing conditions for certain competitions. What we're focusing on this evening, and for the purpose of this particular course, we're focusing on how the laws of cricket, or what they see as no balls. So firstly, when it comes to the mode of the delivery, it's important for the umpire to ask the bowler whether the bowler, he or she, is going to bowl right or left-handed. And upon receiving that information, the umpire then needs to inform the striker. So there's two bit of information that when the bowler gives you his or her cap, that you need to confirm. Bowler, are you left or right-handed? And then secondly, are you bowling over or around the wicket? In the next slide, I'm going to show you what is meant by over and around the wicket, when a bowler is bowling over and when a bowler is bowling around the wicket. But for now, your first job as an umpire, if a bowler comes to you, hand you his or her cap, you need to ask the bowler, right or left-handed, over or around the wicket. You then need to relay that information to the striker. Now, the law tells us it's unfair for the bowler to change mode of delivery, i.e., after informing you that he or she is bowling right-handed, to suddenly bowl left-handed at the striker. According to the laws of cricket, that is unfair. Bowler is not allowed to. Bowler can switch hands at any time as long as the bowler informs the umpire which hand they're going to bowl with, and the umpire then in turn needs to inform the striker. So a bowler, if they fail to notify the umpire that, or if they switch hands, or if they inform you they're bowling over the wicket and suddenly bowl around the wicket without informing you, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Secondly, underarm bowling is not permitted. Yes, there are certain divisions of cricket that allows underarm bowling. I know I've seen a few blind cricket matches, and their underarm bowling is allowed, but generally, underarm bowling not allowed. The third thing, according to the laws of cricket, that's not allowed is the ball should not be thrown. So these three instances is seen as the mode of the delivery when it comes to informing the umpire whether you're bowling right or left, over or around, underarm bowling not permitted, and ball not to be thrown. I mentioned earlier about whether bowler is bowling right around or over the wicket. Let's just go. I'm going to explain when a bowler is bowling over and when a bowler is bowling around. So let's start with the first picture on the left-hand side. So we'll move from left to right. Don't look at the batter, whether the batter is left-handed or right-handed or how the batter is standing. That's irrelevant. When it comes to whether a bowler is bowling over or around the wicket, you only need to look at the bowler and which side of the wicket the bowler is bowling from. So don't look at the batter. Only look at the bowler and which side the bowler is bowling from. So I want you to visualize the first picture on your left. You're going to move from left to right. So this is a right-handed bowler. Where the arrow is pointing, that's where the batter is standing. So it's irrelevant whether it's a left or right-handed batter. You're just focusing on where the bowler is bowling from. So if the bowler is bowling from where the arrow is now going, the tip of the start of the arrow, according to the law, the bowler is bowling around the wicket. One of the things that I take heed of that helps me whether the bowler is bowling over or around the wicket, I look at in which the hand the ball is and which hand is closer to the wicket and which hand is further to the wicket. So if you look at the first picture from your left, this is a right-hand bowler bowling from the right-hand side. Which hand is closer to the stumps? So the left hand is closer to the stumps. So if your right hand is further away from the stumps, the bowler is bowling right arm around the wicket. This is around the wicket for a right-hander. Second picture from the left. Again, ignore the batter. You're just focusing on the bowler. Again, what I use is which hand is the ball, and this is a right-handed bowler, so the ball will be in his right hand. hand is closer to the stumps. So the right hand, the bowling hand, or the hand that the ball is in, will be closer to the stumps. So that's my indication that this bowler is bowling right arm over the wicket. Same principle applies to the left-handed bowler. Again, I look at which hand the ball is in. So if we're looking at the third pick from the left, this is now a left-handed bowler. So the ball is going to be in his or her left hand. Coming close to the stumps, which hand is further away from the stumps? The left hand is further away from the stumps. So that's my indication that the bowler is bowling left arm around the wicket. The last pick, left arm bowler again. The bowling hand is close to the stumps. So the bowler is bowling left arm over the wicket. We mentioned earlier that the law does not want the ball to be thrown or to be delivered underarm. So what happens if a bowler throws the ball or suddenly delivers the ball underarm? What action can we as umpires take? So if according to you, the umpire, the ball was thrown or delivered underarm, you need to call and signal no ball. And when the ball is dead, you need to inform your colleague the reason why you called no ball. And in this case, let's say the ball has been thrown. Then bowler's end umpire needs to give the bowler a first and final warning for throwing or for delivering underarm. And this first and final warning shall apply throughout the innings. So if it happened in the first innings, the bowler will be on a first and final warning throughout the first innings. Second innings, he or she will start clean slate again, but if you give a first and final for throwing in the first innings, it will apply throughout the first innings. You need to inform everyone that you've given the bowler a first and final for throwing. So what if in that innings, again the bowler throws the ball or the same bowler bowls underarm? What do you now do? You need to call and signal no ball again. So, but take into account, this is the second time in this innings that the bowler has thrown or bowled underarm. You now call and signal no ball. Now you need to tell the fielding captain to suspend the bowler. This bowler is then not allowed to bowl again in the first innings. If it happened mid-over, or if there's still a part of the over left to be completed, the over needs to be completed by another bowler, and this bowler should not have bowled the previous over, nor is the bowler allowed to bowl the next over. So this bowler that's was now suspended is not allowed to bowl again in that particular innings, i.e., in my example, not allowed again to bowl in the first innings. In the second innings, yes, the bowler is then allowed to bowl again. You'll then inform everyone and you'll report this to the governing body of cricket for that particular competition. What happens if a bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before entering his or her delivery stride? Tom actually covered this in Law 20. So if you can just visualize as the bowler is running in before entering his or her delivery stride, the bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end. Law wants us to call and signal dead ball if the bowler throws towards the striker's end before entering his or her delivery stride. So when it comes to the feet and what is seen as per the law as a fair delivery. So when it comes to the feet, the law sees the back foot and the front foot differently. There are different creases pertaining to the 2 feet. We're now going to see which crease goes with what foot. Let's start with the back foot. So when it comes to the back foot, the law wants the back foot to land within and not touching the return crease. So which crease goes with the back foot? The return crease. And all that needs to happen, that back foot upon first landing should not be touching the return crease. When it comes to the front foot, which crease goes with the front foot? The popping crease. So the law wants some part of the foot, whether grounded or raised, it needs to be behind the popping crease. So when it comes to front foot, the crease that goes with the front foot is the popping crease, and all you need to ask yourself is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? If yes, it's a fair delivery. When it comes to the back foot, if the back foot landed within and it's not touching the return crease, it's then a fair delivery. Also, when it comes to the front foot, the law wants the front foot to land on the same side of the imaginary line joining the two middle stumps. The bullet point number 2, there's a picture later on that will illustrate what bullet point number 2 is trying to tell us. But for now, just let's focus on bullet point 1, which is front foot needs to land with a grounded or raised behind the popping crease. Let's look at a few pictures that will illustrate to us how the no ball law works when it comes to the feet. So let's start with the front foot here. And if you can visualize, this is a right arm bowler bowling over the wicket. So what question do you ask when it comes to the front foot? Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? So if you see the popping crease, which part, the foot needs to be behind the back edge of the popping crease, not that front edge. It needs to be behind the back edge. So is there any part of the front foot behind the popping crease? Yes. So we're happy with the front foot, no issue. Back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes, the back foot is touching the return crease. So that's why this is a no ball. Next pick. Let's start with the front foot. Any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, we're happy with the front foot because the whole of the front foot is behind the popping crease. Back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease upon first landing? No, the back foot is not touching the return crease. That's why this is a fair delivery. Next pick. Let's start with the back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? And if you can visualize, this is a left-arm bowler bowling around the wicket. So is there any part of this left-arm bowler's back foot touching the return crease? No, there's not. So that's why we're happy with the back foot. Front foot. Is there any part of the front foot where the grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes. There's a big chunk of the front foot behind the popping crease. That's why we're happy with the front foot. That's why this is a fair delivery. So when I started umpiring, I actually thought this was a no ball because the foot was on the other side of the return crease. No. When it comes to the feet, there are different creases for the feet. For the back foot, you need to focus on where the back foot is in relation to the return crease. And when it comes to the front foot, you only need to judge where the front foot is in relation to the popping crease. Let's start with the front foot. Again, this is a left-arm bowler bowling around the wicket. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes. It's a big part of the foot behind, so we're happy with the front foot. Back foot. Is there any part of the back foot touching the return crease? Yes. That's why this is a no ball. Back foot. Any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No. We're happy with the back foot. Front foot. Is there any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, you can see there is still a small portion of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a fair delivery. Let's start with the back foot. Any part of the back foot touching the return crease? No, happy with back foot. Any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's no part of the front foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a no ball. Back foot. Any part of the back foot touching the return crease? A no, so we're happy with the back foot. Any part of the front foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the back edge of the popping crease? No, there's no part of the foot behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a no ball. Another point that I want to emphasize with when it comes to the no ball law and when it comes to the feet, you need to check first landing of the feet. So if I'm going to use the front foot as an example, you need to check upon first landing of that front foot, not where the front foot ends up. When that front foot lands for the first time, that is when you need to ask yourself, is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? And you need to judge first landing. If the answer is yes, there is a part of the foot behind the back edge of the popping crease, it's a fair delivery. Do not judge it where the foot ends up. And you'll often find, especially on turf wickets, bowlers' front foot sometimes slides. So let's, for argument's sake, look at this pick, and the first landing was behind the popping crease, but the foot slid and ended up here. So now it looks like yes, the bowler is way over, but you need to judge the first landing of that front foot. And was there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? If yes, fair delivery. If no, no ball. Back foot, we're happy, not touching the return crease. Front foot. Is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? Yes, this foot is raised, but you can see there is still a portion behind the back edge of the popping crease. That's why this is a fair delivery. Back foot, not touching the return crease. Happy. No problem with the back foot. Front foot. Is there any part of the front foot whether grounded or raised behind the back edge of the popping crease? The answer to the question is no. That's why this is a no ball. Earlier, I mentioned part of the front foot, it should not be over the imaginary line from middle stump to middle stump. So this is the picture that will illustrate what the law means. So imagine or visualize this is a left-arm bowler bowling over the wicket, and look where the front foot is landing. So it's over the wicket, the front foot is landing way on the other side. It's on the other side of this imaginary line from middle stump to middle stump. And if this is the case, you need to call and signal no ball, because the law now sees this bowler not being left arm over the wicket anymore. They see this being left arm around the wicket now. And we've mentioned earlier, if a bowler changes their mode of delivery from over to round without informing you, you need to call and signal a no ball. I've never had this in my umpiring career, but it is part of the law. And if it happens, you need to know what to do. So the foot needs to be on the other side of this imaginary line from wicket to wicket. In a game, you won't see this line drawn from middle stump to middle stump. You just need to visualize and draw an imaginary line. And if it is on the other side, you need to call and signal no ball. So what happens if a bowler breaks the wicket while delivering the ball? Either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. If after the ball comes into play, the bowler breaks the wicket with any part of his or her body. And if that happens, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. The law goes on further by saying, if any clothing or object falls from the bowler and it falls on the wicket and puts the bails down or put the wicket down, either umpire also to call and signal no ball. An example of this is bowlers often these days bowl with a towel at next to their side or at the back. So in their delivery stride, if this towel then falls onto the stumps, dislodges the bails, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So what happens if a ball bounces more than once or it rolls along the ground? The law wants either umpire to call and signal no ball if the ball was delivered and it did not touch the bat or person of the striker. This ball now bounces more than once before reaching the popping crease. So it needs to bounce a second time before reaching the popping crease. If it bounces a second time before reaching the popping crease, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball, although the striker's in umpire would be in the best position because he or she's got a side-on view and to see if the ball bounced for a second time before reaching the popping crease. But the crucial point is it needs to bounce a second time before the popping crease. If it bounced a second time after the popping crease, it's a fair delivery. It's only if it bounced a second time before reaching the popping crease that either umpire or the strikers in umpire is actually in the best position to call this. Also, if a ball that was delivered rolls along the ground before reaching the popping crease, if this is the case, either umpire to call and signal no ball. So it needs to be, ball needs to be delivered, and it then before reaching the popping crease, that ball rolls along the ground. Yes. If that is the case, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Also, if a bowler delivers a ball and that ball pitches either wholly or partially off the pitch before reaching the line of the striker's wicket, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball, although the umpire in the best position to call this is the bowlers in umpire. It's got a front-on view. You can work together as a team because the first 2 bullet points speaks about ball bouncing more than once before reaching the popping crease. The third bullet point wants the ball to be pitched wholly or partially off the pitch before reaching the striker's wicket, so or the bowling crease. So the first 2 bullet points is the popping crease. The third bullet point is the bowling crease. So if it pitches off wholly or partially off the pitch before the bowling crease, umpire needs to call and signal no ball. So what happened if a ball causes the striker to leave the pitch or the ball coming to rest in front of the striker's wicket? Again, if a bowler delivers the ball and in delivering the ball goes off the pitch and the striker then needs to leave the pitch to go play the ball. What the law is telling us is, in this instance, you need to call and signal no ball, and a split second later, you need to call and signal dead ball. So it's no ball, dead ball. They like literally split second from each other. So ball delivered, and it either comes to rest before the bowling crease, or i.e. before the striker's wicket. It comes to a standstill. The ball delivered, it comes to a standstill before reaching the striker's wicket. Umpire needs to intervene by calling and signaling no ball and immediately calling and signaling dead ball. Or the ball is so far off the pitch that the striker needs to leave it to go play it. You then need to intervene as the umpire by calling and signaling no ball, and immediately, split second later, you need to call dead ball as well. So what happens if a fielder intercepts a delivery? Again, a ball that was delivered by the bowler, and the ball now makes contact with a fielder's person before it made contact with the striker's bat or person or passes the striker's wicket. Example of this is a spinner bowling, and there's a short leg standing in front of the batter. So the bowler delivers the ball is a bit wide and goes against the foot of the short leg fielder. Umpire needs to intervene by calling and signaling no ball, and a split second later calling and signaling dead ball. So you call and signal no ball, split second later call and signal dead ball. What happens if a ball bounces over head height of the striker? So if a bowler bowls a bouncer and a striker standing upright at the popping crease, the ball goes over the striker's head. According to the laws of cricket, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball if it goes over the head of the striker standing upright at the popping crease. But this is according to the laws of cricket. We do know there are playing condition in place. You've seen on TV, if a ball goes over head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, what happens, or what signal do the umpire make on TV? They'll call it, or they'll signal wide. But that is a playing condition pertaining to that particular competition. But according to the laws of cricket, if a ball goes over head height of the striker standing upright at the popping crease, either umpire, although the striker's in umpires in the best position, needs to call and signal no ball. Again, all the no balls, the 10 type of no balls that I'm covering is based on law, what the law tells us what no balls are. And yes, there are playing conditions where there are other forms of no balls, but we're not covering those type of no balls. We only cover what the law tells us what no balls are. And over head out of the striker standing upright at the popping crease is a no ball according to the laws of cricket. There are other type of no balls in terms of the position of the keeper, limitation of onside fielders not to encroach on the pitch. I'll show you pictures now that will illustrate these other type of no balls. This is an example of the no ball. Keeper is not allowed to put his or her hands in front of the stumps unless the ball either touches the bat or person of the striker, the ball passes the wicket, or the striker attempts a run. Otherwise, those hands should stay behind the stumps. In this instance, because the keeper's hands are in front of the stumps, the law sees this as encroachment by the wicketkeeper. The striker's in umpire needs to call and signal no ball. According to the laws of cricket, you only allowed a max of 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. So if there are more than 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side, either umpire needs to call and signal no ball. Here's an example of, this is a right-hand batter. There are 3 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. The law allows a max of 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. So that's why this is called a no ball, and you can see there the umpire called and signaled no ball. When it comes to the encroachment by a fielder, this is a much better pick instead of that graphic. This is not allowed. This fielder is encroaching on the pitch. So practically, if you see this as an umpire, I'm a more proactive umpire. Lots of players don't know the laws. If I do see this, I will have a quiet word with the fielder. Just tell the fielder to move half a meter back so that there's no part of his or her foot on the pitch. I don't let the fielder stand there, and then when the ball gets delivered, now I want to call and signal no ball. Yes, technically, you are right. The law The law tells us if there are encroachment by any fielders, you need to call and signal, but I'm a more proactive umpire. I try to help the fielders. Lots of them don't know the law. So I'll just whisper in this fielder's ear to just move half a meter back. Umpire to revoke the call of no ball. If dead ball is called, example, a bowler overstepping, you call as bowlers in, you call no ball, but then the bowler does not deliver the ball. In that case, you need to revoke your no ball call and you need to call and signal dead ball. If of the same ball, there's a no ball and a wide, so who's boss? The law tells us no ball is boss. If there is of the same ball, there's a no ball and a wide, which one do you take? Do you take the no ball? Do you take the wide? Do you take both? No, you don't take both. You should only take one, but which one do you take? You take the no ball. No ball is boss at all times. If you do call no ball, ball is not dead. And we'll now see that a batter can be dismissed off a no ball. So the call of no ball does not make the ball dead. Penalty of 1 run to be awarded on the call of no ball. And this shall be added to any run scored. So if there is a call of no ball and a batter hits a boundary 4, so 4 runs will go towards the striker, and the no ball will be debited against the bowler. So 5 runs in total will be added to the score. No ball not to count as 1 for the over. And how can you be dismissed of a no ball? There are only 3 ways. And what are they? So as soon as no ball is called, in total there are 9 modes of dismissals. But as soon as no ball gets called, you can only be dismissed 3 ways of a no ball. What are they? Firstly, hit the ball twice. Secondly, obstructing the field. And lastly, run out. These are the only 3 ways that you can be dismissed of a no ball. Hit the ball twice, obstructing the field, and a run out. So can you be bowled of a no ball? No. Can you be stumped of a no ball? No. Hit wicket of a no ball? None of those other 6 modes of dismissals can be effected if a no ball is called. Only these 3. Next law speaks about the wide ball. And again, we are focusing on more day cricket and 2 innings per side cricket, or test match cricket as an example. Yes, I know in white ball cricket, T20 or 50 over cricket, there are wide guidelines that help us, but in test match cricket, we don't have any wide guidelines. So how do we adjudicate a wide ball when it comes to more day cricket or in test match cricket? The law guides us. The law tells us for us to judge a wide, it needs to pass wide of the striker, standing in a normal batting position. So that's all the law is telling us. It needs to pass wide of the striker, standing in a normal batting position. It's not telling us much because it tells us it needs to pass wide of the striker. But what does it mean passing wide of the striker? The law actually guides us by saying it actually gives us a definition of passing wide of the striker. It tells us the definition that you need to take into account when a ball passes wide of the striker is it needs to be sufficiently within reach of the striker, and the striker needs to be able to hit the ball by the means of a normal cricket shot. So that is the criteria that you need to take into account. I mean, for many years, I played the game at club level for 25 years. And for 25 years, I actually thought in more day cricket, the return creases, that is the wide lines. So if it's outside the return crease, you'll call wide. If you bowl inside the return crease, it's a fair delivery. So, I mean, as a player, we didn't know the laws, but that's how we applied it for 25 years. It's only once I did my first level one, did my level one course, then I saw, okay, that's actually not the definition of a wide in modern day cricket. The definition that you need to look at is, or that you need to apply as an umpire is it passing wide of the striker? And the criteria that you need to take into account is how to judge if it's wide of the striker. Can the striker hit the ball by the means of a normal cricket shot? If the answer to the question is yes, it's a fair delivery. If the answer is no, I don't think the striker can hit this ball. It's so wide and the striker is not able to hit this ball by the means of a normal cricket shot, then it is then you need to call and signal wide. So if the umpire, you now decided that the delivery is wide, now the law tells us call and signal wide when the ball passes the striker's wicket. So delay your call, don't be too hasty to call. Passes the striker's wicket, then you call and signal no ball. So just again to emphasize this call, if you do judge that the delivery is wide, wait for the ball to pass the striker's wicket. Technically, the law actually tells us you call and signal only once the ball is past the striker's wicket. But technically, the ball is already wide from the instant that the bowler enters his or her delivery stride, i.e. when that back foot lands. That is technique when the ball is wide already. But the law guides us in terms of calling and signaling it. Even though technically it's already wide as soon as that back foot lands, but you need to delay your call of wide. Don't call it too early. Wait till it passes the striker's wicket before calling and signaling wide. When I started umpiring, I had a lot of egg on my face. I was too hasty to call wide. The ball was very wide. Spinner bowling and ball not past the striker yet. And then I call and signal wide. It looked like it was past the striker. Then the striker late cut it to the third man boundary for 4. So I looked like a bit of an idiot there. The umpire is calling and signaling wide. Meanwhile, it went off the middle of the bat to the third man boundary for 4. I then had to cancel my wide signal and had to signal boundary 4. So don't be in a hurry. Wait till the ball passes the striker's wicket until you before you call and signal wide. Umpire to revoke the call of wide if there's been any contact between the ball and the striker's bat or the striker's person. Delivery shall not be a wide, and you'll often find it these days where the strikers do move around. And if the striker, by moving, brings the ball sufficiently within his or her reach to hit it by the means of a normal cricket shot. So if the striker did move and the ball was a bit wide, but because of this movement, the striker now moved closer to the ball and the striker was now able to hit the ball by the means of a normal cricket shot, you will not call and signal wide. If the striker stood still and the ball was wide and your judgment is the striker would not have been able to hit it by the means of a normal cricket shot, you'll call and signal wide. But if the striker by moving, even though the ball is a bit wide, but by moving, the striker brings it sufficiently within his or her reach, don't call and signal wide. Ball does not become dead on the call of wide. There's a 1-run penalty for the wide, and this penalty shall stand even though a batter may be dismissed off this wide delivery, and the wide shall be in addition to any run scored or any other award for penalties. So how shall runs be scored? All runs completed by the batters or a boundary allowance together with the penalty for the wide shall be scored as wide extras. Wide not to count as one of the valid balls of the over, i.e. the ball needs to be rebowled. And how can you be dismissed of a wide. There are 4 ways to be dismissed of a wide. What are they? First method to be dismissed of a wide, hit wicket. Second, obstructing the field. Thirdly, run out. And lastly, stumped. These are the only 4 modes of dismissal. There are 9 modes of dismissals in total. These are the only 4 modes that you can be dismissed of a wide. So as soon as a wide is called, you can only be out hit wicket or obstructing the field or run out or stumped. The last law that I'm covering for this evening are buys and leg buys. I'm going to start with buys. So what are the conditions that needs to be in place when it comes to buys? The first condition is it should not have touched the striker in any way, nor the person of the striker, nor the bat. It goes past, the ball goes past the striker without touching anything. That is the condition that needs to be in place when it comes to buys. It should not have touched anything, whether it's the body, the bat, nothing. So if the ball goes past the striker, didn't touch anything, goes past the keeper and the batter starts to run, no problem. You'll allow that, and that will be any runs completed, or if the ball goes over the boundary, that will be scored as buys. So the only condition that's in place when it comes to buys and that you need to look at is, or the question that you need to ask yourself is, did the ball touch the striker, it's bat or person? If no, you'll allow buys. Lots of players think that there's another condition, you must play a shot for buys to accrue. That's not one of the conditions. So if you can visualize the following scenario, the spinner bowls, the or fast bowler bowls, batter or striker shoulders arms. The ball goes past the striker's foot, not touching anything. Didn't touch the foot, nor the person, nor nothing, nor did it touch the bat. Goes past the striker and then goes through the keeper's legs and they start to run. I've often hear players saying, Umpy, they're not allowed to run, didn't offer a shot. In the next section that we're going to cover, when it comes to leg buys, now it's important, we need to take into account whether a shot is played or not. But when it comes to buys, there's only one condition that you need to ask yourself. Did the ball touch the striker, a person or bat? If no, they can run buys. There's no condition that says the striker must have attempted a shot for buys to accrue. If they didn't touch the bat, if it didn't touch the bat or person, the striker can run buys. Now, when it comes to leg buys, so let's see what conditions needs to be in place when it comes to leg buys. So now, the ball needs to strike or touch the person or the protective equipment of the striker. So now this is different to the buys. When the condition for buys is it should not have touched anything. Leg buys, if it touches the person or any protective equipment of the striker, leg buys can only be scored if the following 2 criteria is met. So the first condition, it needs to touch the person or protective equipment. But then there's 2 criteria that needs to be met for leg buys to be awarded. What are those? And this is where this needs to attempt to play the ball with his or her bat. There needs to be an attempt, there needs to be a shot to be played for leg buys to accrue. Or the other criteria is striker try to avoid being hit by the ball. So when it comes to leg buys, if the ball touches the person or protective equipment, 2 conditions needs to be met. They needs to have played a shot or try to avoid being hit by the ball. If this is the case, they've played a shot or they try to take evasive action and it hits the person or protective equipment of the striker, leg buys can accrue. They can run leg buys. Even if a no ball was called, you'll just add the no balls together with the leg buys. So when it comes to leg buys, needs to touch the person or protective equipment. And this is where the striker needs to have attempted to play at the ball or try to avoid being hit by the ball. If this is the case, no problem, they can run leg buys. So now we know when leg buys can be taken. So when are batters not allowed to take leg buys? So when shall you, the umpire, not allow leg buys to be taken? We just saw the criteria or the conditions that needs to be met for leg buys to be taken. What were those criteria? You have to play a shot and or take evasive action. So now for leg buys not to be awarded is if the batter did not attempt to play a shot. If the batter shouldered arms and the ball hits the person and it ricochets towards fine leg buys not to be awarded. If the batter did not try to avoid being hit by the ball, leg buys not to be awarded. So now we know if there was no attempt to play at the ball, nor did the striker try to avoid being hit by the ball, we now know leg buys should not be awarded. But often you'll find, and lots of players didn't know the laws, and I'm not having a go at the players because I played the game for 25 years at club level, and I thought I knew the laws, but it's only once I did my level 1, 2, and 3 did I realize I actually didn't know. I probably knew 5% of the law. So you often find, even at provincial level, international level, players, lots of them don't know the laws. There are many players that do, but lots of them don't know the laws. So now we now know like leg buy should not be awarded if you don't play a shot. So now the batter shoulders arms. So just visualize this. Bowler bowls, batter shoulders arms, hit the pad, and it ricochets to fine leg. And the batter now starts to run. So what do? The law tells us that you need to call and signal dead ball, but you need to delay that call of signaling of dead ball because you can only call it upon the completion of either the first run or once the ball has reached the boundary. Only once they've completed the run, now you call and signal dead ball. You give the fielding side the opportunity to run the batters out. They didn't know the law. It's not the fielding side's fault that they didn't know they're not supposed to run. And if they're stupid enough to try to run after the striker didn't attempt to play at the ball, you give the fielding side the opportunity to run either of the batters out. But as soon as the first run is completed, that's where you need to intervene as the umpire and call and signal dead ball, or as soon as the ball goes over the boundary, you intervene by calling and signaling dead ball. So again, don't be in a rush to call and signal. And you often find players, the batter didn't offer a shot, goes to fine leg, they start to run. The players are like, umpy, they're not allowed to run dead ball. You just say, relax, guys, I've got this. I need to delay my call. I can only call and signal dead ball once they've completed the first run, or if the ball goes over the boundary, then I can only call and signal dead ball. So now we know leg buys not to be awarded if they didn't offer a shot. And if they do decide to run and they do complete one run, and we've just heard upon the completion of the first run, you need to call and signal dead ball. So what do you need to do? We know that leg buys should not be awarded. So you now need to disallow all runs to the batting side. You need to return any not out batter back to his original end. Signal no ball to the scorers, if applicable. Award any 5 penalty runs that's applicable, except penalty runs if the ball should hit the protective helmet that was placed behind the keeper. Tom, I know that was a long spell. Thank you so much. I'm handing back over to you for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Dula. 1 hour and 55 minutes later, we can go through the questions that I posed to the candidates during the presentation of the first two laws, the boundary law and the dead ball law. After we've gone through those answers, then we will take any other questions or comments posted in the chat box for discussion. So the first quiz question that I posed this evening was to do with a bouncer bowled by a fast bowler. Batter tries to play a hook shot, misses the ball, so the ball does not hit the bat. It hits the top of the striker's helmet and goes over the boundary into the stands. Which two signals should the bowler's end umpire signal? Quite a few of you have said boundary 4. A few people said 4 leg byes. I see 6, and I see 4 leg byes, and I see 6. I see somebody said no ball and 5 runs. I'm not sure how they came to that answer. But ladies and gents, as I mentioned, and as the law prescribes, a boundary 6 can only be hit off the bat. Okay, so even though the ball has gone on the full over the boundary, because it has not come off the bat, we cannot award a boundary 6. So the correct answer to that scenario is 4 leg byes. So the bowlers and umpire will signal leg byes first, wait for the acknowledgement from the scorers, and then we'll signal boundary 4 and wait for the acknowledgement of the scorers for the second signal. Okay, remember, law is pretty clear. A boundary 6 can only be scored off the bat. So the correct answer for that first quiz question this evening was leg byes, 4 leg byes to be signaled by the bowler's end umpire. Quiz question 19.2 is the highly controversial boundary catch by the Australian fielder in a Big Bash match. It has caused a lot of stir, and a lot of purists believe that it should be a boundary 6. How can you possibly juggle the ball outside of the boundary and then still complete the catch inside of the boundary? The law again here is quite clear. To complete a fair catch close to the boundary, the first contact with the ball needs to be within the field of play, and the last contact with the ball needs to be within the field of play. And those two conditions are met by that fielder. Yes, he does go outside the field of play and makes contact with the ball, but when he makes contact with the ball, both his feet are in the air. So that is not considered outside of the field of play. So he is in maybe what we can term as no man's land at that point in time. And the fact that he then throws the ball up and comes back into the field of play before he completes the catch meets the requirements for a fair catch on the boundary. So the correct answer for quiz question 19.2 for this evening is out court. I don't think it looks right. I feel that you can't have somebody juggling the ball outside of the field of play. The commentators in that scenario actually rightly say that he could potentially juggle the ball outside of the field of play hundreds of times, as long as he's not touching the ground while he is in contact with the ball and he completes the catch within the field of play, that would be out caught. So as the law currently stands, that is out caught. Maybe they'll look at changing it, but this happened 2 years ago. I think the lawmakers are wanting to encourage the athletic fielding that we do see on the boundary by fielders in this day and age. So maybe preventing that catch would almost not award athletic fielding, and so the law has stayed the same. There was some debate as to whether the law would change after that particular catch, but it has been a couple of years now and the law still hasn't changed. I think it will remain for the time being. So the correct answer for quiz question 19.2 was out caught. Quiz question 20.1. Johnny Bairstow became Johnny Walker at Lord's. What we need to ask ourselves as the bowlers and umpire, was the ball finally settled in the hands of Alex Carey before he threw down the stumps at Johnny Bairstow's end? The answer is definitely no. He didn't have the ball in his hands for even half a second. As soon as he caught it, he threw the ball towards the stumps. And yes, Johnny Bairstow thought the ball was dead, but the Australians definitely didn't think that the ball was dead. So you as the bowlers and umpire cannot consider the ball dead if the fielding side do not consider the ball dead. The bowlers and umpire had not called over, so the ball was still alive and Johnny Bairstow was out. What was the mode of dismissal? Was it out run out or was it out stumped? Johnny Bairstow was not attempting a run. He was simply going down the pitch to go meet his batting partner, Ben Stokes, at the end of the over. So he was out stumped. That is the answer for quiz question 20.1. Quiz question 20.2, Mohammed Wasim also went walkabout against Ireland. He was struck on the glove by the ball and did ring his fingers. But do we consider that a serious enough injury for us to call and signal dead ball? I do not think so. The umpires on the day didn't think so. They allowed play to continue and he was given out, run out. When would we consider a batter as seriously injured or any fielder as seriously injured where we should call and signal dead ball? There are a few clues that we can use and some guidelines that we have put together. If a fielder is struck on the neck or the head by a ball, especially a fast bowler delivery, then we shall consider it a serious injury. If the player screams from pain, then we shall consider it a serious injury. If the player is knocked off balance by the impact of the ball or impact of another fielder, then we could consider it a serious injury. And of course, if a player is unconscious from an injury, then we would definitely consider it a serious injury. If there is any blood that comes streaming out of a player's body because of the impact of an injury, then we shall consider it a serious injury. All of those considerations that I've mentioned did not happen in the scenario with Mohamed Wasim. In fact, what you might have noticed is halfway through the video, he is seen to be on his haunches, putting pressure on both hands. And for me, if my hand was really seriously injured, I would not be putting pressure on it. I would have taken my glove off. I would have been blowing at my hand. I would have continued to wring my hand. And I certainly wouldn't even have called for the physio. The physios are always looking out for a player being seriously injured and will come running on without invitation. As soon as they see a serious injury, they will come sprinting on. You do not need to call for a physio when you are seriously injured. That should be the least of your worries. Mohamed Wasim was in good enough condition to walk out of his crease. He could easily have walked back into his crease. So the correct decision on the day is the correct decision tonight as well for quiz question 20.2, out, run out. Last quiz question, 20.3, is the Scotland bowler who bowls from behind the bowling crease, but in front of the umpire. So it is a legal delivery. However, law tells us in the dead ball law that if a striker is not ready for a delivery and moves away from the delivery and does not attempt to play a shot, then the umpire will call and signal dead ball. And then the umpire will find out from the striker why he or she moved away, and will, if it was a silly reason or he or she should not have moved away, then the umpire will warn the batter for time wasting. However, they will still call and signal dead ball. Okay, it is not for the umpire to decide whether or not the striker is ready. It is for the striker to decide whether or not they are ready. And if they feel they are not ready, the striker is well within his or her rights to move away from the stumps, not play the shot, and the umpire must call and signal dead ball. And then only the umpire can inquire as to why the striker moved away. So as much as the Scottish bowler can complain that the batter is doing it too often, and I as the bowler, I'm allowed to bowl from at the popping crease, at the bowling crease, a meter behind the bowling crease, 2 meters behind the bowling crease. As long as I'm in front of the bowler's end umpire, I can bowl from there. That's fine, but the striker still has to be ready. And if the striker is not ready, he or she is well within his or her rights to move away from the delivery, not play at it. And the answer to the quiz question then is not out and dead ball to be called. Okay, so that was all the quiz questions that we posed. So now I'm going to go back to the top of the meeting chat room, and I'm going to go through all other questions and comments. Dion says, why will it be called boundary 4 even when it is high up in the tree without touching the field before hitting the tree? Abdullah, we saw that video of Matthew Boast hitting the longest 4 in the history of cricket, hitting the top of the tree at Pietermaritzburg Oval. That tree is a few meters inside the field of play. And the custom there is that if the ball hits any part of the tree, it will be called boundary 4, regardless of whether it hits the bottom of the tree trunk or the highest leaf of that tree. Why is it always boundary 4, Abdullah? Why can't we say if it hits the top half of the tree, it's boundary 6, and the bottom half of the tree, it's boundary 4?
So Dion, if you are going to bring that type of criteria in, so where would you then draw the line? Where is top? Where is bottom? I can promise you there is going to be arguments because the batting side they going to see. I mean, where's the top? Where's the top of? Are you going to draw a line on the tree? Batting side will say, yeah, but we think that is hitting the top end of the tree. Bowling, the fielding side will say, no, 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 no. I think that was more to the bottom end, so it should be 4. You just opening yourself up for arguments if you put criteria or 2 sets of criteria in place. It is so much easier if there's only 1 set of criteria, and it doesn't happen that often. I mean, I stood at Pietermaritzburg Oval for many years, and you will be surprised even how huge that tree is. For my 11 years at the Maritzburg Oval, and I've done many games. They've only hit the tree once. I'm not sure how many times they've hit it in your games at the Pietermaritzburg Oval, Tom. But funny enough, they've only hit it once in all my games at the Pietermaritzburg Oval. But to come back to the question, it's so much easier if you have 1 criteria. Easy for everyone, no arguments. If it hits the tree, boundary 4. Because if you're going to have 2 or 3 sets of criteria in place, bottom is 4, top is 6. You're just opening yourself up for argument. So that is just the main reason why. Just make it easier for everyone, having 1 rule, 1 criteria. How are we going to deal with it? And the other thing also is we the law wants us to follow the custom of that particular ground. You'll often find different grounds have different customs. So what the custom mean is how was it treated, because that tree's been there for centuries. So how how does the locals treat it if the ball should hit the tree? So since that field was developed, that tree was there. So since day one, they've handled it by saying, to make it easy for everyone, if it hits the tree, boundary 4. So everyone knows it. And yes, it is as a batter, and I was a batter in my playing days, I will definitely feel hard done by. And in my one instance, when it did hit the tree, it also hit the top branches of the tree. The batter actually, they couldn't find the ball. He hit it over the nets. You don't even know where the ball was hit. And that was that big a 6. But we all could hear the rustling of the top of the tree when the ball went past the tree. So unfortunately, that was the biggest 6 that I've seen. That was only given a 4. But that was the custom. That was the rule in place. Everyone knows it. It's just simple for everyone. Ball hit 3, boundary 4. No arguments. Same for both sides. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Jula. Next question is from Srikanth. What happens when the fielder touches the boundary line before taking a catch and while catching in the field of play? So I know it happened to you when you were TV umpire in the 2024 SA20 season 2, Abdullah. I found a video similar to your incident, which I'm going to play, and I hope this answers Srikanth's answer. So bear with me while I share my screen. So we will see in this particular incident that Jasprit Bumrah takes what appears to be a great catch. However, it is not a catch. And Abdullah, you can explain to us why this is not a catch. In fact, he doesn't take the catch. He palms it back inside. But if he had thrown that to a teammate and the teammate had caught it, would that have been a boundary 6 or would that have been a catch? Dullah, I'm going to play it one more time for you to make your judgment as the TV umpire for this scenario.
The question that we need to ask, or the criteria that the law puts in place, is your first contact should always be from within the field of play. So yes, you can jump in the air, handles the ball, whether you want to catch it or palm it inside. But the first thing that needs to be in place is it needs to happen from within the field of play. Now, in Bumrah's case, when Bumrah jumped up in the air and touched the ball, Bumrah did not jump from within the field of play. Bumrah's heels of his shoes was touching the boundary rope, and because he jumped or that gets seen as jumping from beyond the boundary. So even if you touching the boundary and you jump up, you seen as jumping from beyond the boundary. And if you do jump from beyond the boundary and touches the ball, it gets seen as a boundary 6. So that's why in that instance, that was a bound, didn't see the end result, but I'm sure it was given as a boundary 6. If Bumrah jumped in the air from within the field of play, i.e. those heels of him wasn't touching the boundary rope, Bumrah would have been a great piece of fielding. But because his feet was touching the boundary rope, it is similar as if, let's say, in another scenario, Bumrah was standing beyond the boundary, and so his feet was totally on the other side of the boundary, and he jumped up in the air and palmed the ball back in. Same principle apply. That is seen as the fielder being beyond the boundary. You cannot jump from beyond the boundary up and palm the ball inside. The law wants you to be within the boundary, jump up, then you're allowed to either catch it or palm it back. Your first contact must be from within the boundary. If it's on the boundary or if you jump from beyond the boundary and handles the ball, it is seen as a boundary 6. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dullah. Abe asks a question about no ball. If a bowler bowls over number 1 and informs the umpire before bowling over number 1 that he's bowling right arm over the wicket, completes the over number 2 is bowled from the other end, and the same bowler comes to bowl over number 3. The same bowler who bowled over number 1 bowls over number 3 from your end again, Abdullah. He does not this time tell you that he's bowling right arm over. If he does bowl right arm over without having informed you, would you call and signal no ball?
So Abi, so what I do is when Let's say in the scenario, this is right arm over and there are two right-handers batting. So first over, the bowler bowls right arm over to both right-handers, right-hand batters. 99% of the time, the bowlers usually, if he's right arm, if he's a right hand and he's bowling to two right-hand batters, they tend to stay over the wicket. So bowling the first over to both righties from over the wicket, coming that same bowler bowling the third one. I wouldn't expect him to tell me, umpire, I'm bowling again over the wicket. Also, what I do is when I do set myself up, I do look at the field, and you can more or less see, looking at the field, looking behind you, where the bowler is going to bowl from. If I do see the bowler standing on the other side, I actually will ask him, are you still coming over? But usually 99.999% of the time, two right-handers and a right-arm bowler bowling to them, that bowler is going to stay over the wicket. So in those instances, I usually don't ask. What I do is, if there's a right hand and a left hand batter, I then, before the start of the over, the bowler hands usually a cap to me. I then just confirm, are you staying over or are you staying around to the lefties? That's when every single time I do, when there's a left and right hand combination, I do confirm with the bowler that they are still staying over or around, or whatever the case may be. But if it's a right hand bowler, two righties batting, he bowled the first one and he comes on to the third, bowling the third over. Nothing stopping you from asking to or confirming, are you still bowling over? Nothing wrong. But in that instance, I don't usually ask. The bowler is going to bowl over the wicket. I'm not sure if you handles it differently, Tom. If it's two righties and a right hand and bowler, do you ask the bowler every single over? But what I religiously do is, if it's right and left, I always confirm at the beginning of the over if the status quo will remain for this over as well. Over, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Dula. I handle it in exactly the same way that you handle it. Reese asks, if the batsman is wearing an arm guard and it is touching the glove, does that arm guard then count as part of the bat? I've put a picture in the chat box of Liam Livingston a few years ago. He broke his hand or got his hand fractured in the first innings. And then when he came out to bat in the second innings, he wanted to protect his hand. So he came out with the forearm guard covering his entire left hand, as you can see in the picture. I'm just sharing my screen and I'll get to the picture in a second. So here we have Liam Livingston with a arm guard covering his glove. So the question is, does that arm guard now form part of the bat, Abdullah, because it is in contact with the glove? And we know that the glove, when it is holding the bat, it is considered as part of the bat. So now, because the arm guard is in contact with the glove, is the arm guard now also considered as part of the bat? Please take us through this scenario.
I'll come back to the Liam Livingston scenario because this is the first and only time that I've seen this method of wearing an arm guard. I haven't seen it in all my years of umpiring. So usually what happens, you'll find the arm guard, and sometimes there is a bit of a gap between the arm guard and the glove. But sometimes there's not a gap between the arm guard and the glove. Many a times you'll find the arm guard, and let's say my black sleeve is the arm guard, and my hand is the glove. So you'll often find the arm guard overlapping slightly the what is the bottom part of the glove called?
The wrist strap.
The wristband. There's the wristband. Yeah, the wristband of the glove.
Yeah.
So you'll often find the arm guard overlapping the wristband of the glove. So how the law sees this as is the arm guard is not an extension of the glove. So yes, even though it's touching the wristband of the glove or slightly overlapping, excuse me, the wristband of the glove, the law sees it as not being an extension. So if the ball should touch the arm guard that's slightly overlapping the wristband and it pops up, that should be given not out because the ball needs to touch the glove. Yes, I know it is slightly overlapping, but the lawmaker said if it's slightly overlapping, it needs to touch the glove for the batter to be given out. If it touched the arm guard, even though it's slightly overlapping, not out needs to be given. So now this Liam Livingston scenario where his arm guard covers his whole glove. I'm surprised the umpires didn't say anything by telling him, "I know your hands is a bit, is a bit sore, but I think you need to pull up this arm guard a bit." Because now, how are you going to treat this? Just explain the law where it says the arm guard is not an extension of the glove, but here you can't even see the glove. If I was the umpire, I would have said to Liam, Liam, I understand you need to protect your hand, but you need to pull up this arm guard. We need to see, see your glove or get some extra padding for your glove because this is pulling the arm guard so far over the glove is not allowed.
Thanks very much, Dula. Abe goes on to ask another question on no ball. Is it a no ball if the keeper comes up to the wicket without informing the striker or the bowler's end umpire? Does the wicket keeper have to inform the umpire every time he comes up and goes back? Very good question, Dula.
So Abe, the first part of your question, to answer your question, is it a no ball? No, it's not a no ball. It's only a no ball if the keeper's hand goes in front of the stumps before it either touches the person or bat of the batter or the striker attempted to run or pass the wicket. So that is when it's a no ball. If we saw a picture earlier with the hands going in front of the stumps, that's when it's a no ball. Your particular scenario gets covered, excuse me, in Law 27 when it deals with the wicketkeeper and actions that or movements that's allowed by the keeper and movements that's not allowed by the keeper. So the law does not allow this particular movement by the keeper. The law sees this as unfair if the keeper, without informing the striker that he or she is going to stand up. If the keeper is going to stand up, there's no issue if they stand up, but the law wants you to inform everyone, or you need to before the ball gets delivered, to stand up. You cannot while the bowler's running in, then suddenly comes up to the stumps. That is seen as unfair movement by the keeper. Umpire needs to intervene. We will deal with this in Law 27, but that's unfair movement. There's actually quite a harsh punishment. Umpire needs to call and signal dead ball, and there's actually 5 penalty runs that you need to award to the batting side. So we'll go through in Law 27 what movements are allowed and not allowed by the keeper. But to answer this particular question, with the keeper suddenly standing a bit back and then suddenly standing onto the stumps, that is unfair movement, not allowed. The dead ball, 5 penalty runs. That's how you deal with unfair movement if the keeper moves and come up to the stumps without informing everyone.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tulap. There are no more questions or comments in the chat box. I see Sandeep's hand is raised in the meeting room. Sandeep, you may unmute your microphone. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Abdullah. One quick question. Is it a good match management practice to let keeper know that he's approaching towards the stumps while ball is being delivered or live when he's standing up?
To let the striker know that the keeper has come up to the stumps.
I'll rephrase my question. Is it a good match management practice to let keeper know that he is coming close to the stumps or beyond stumps while gathering the ball?
Okay. So if his or her hands are close to the stumps,
correct.
So close to being a no ball. So I'll let you know how I handle it, and then Abdullah can tell you how he handles it. So yes, I'm one of those proactive umpires who will inform a wicket keeper that I can see he is or she is coming close to the stumps with their gloves usually, and I will let them know that I will call no ball if their hands are in front of the stumps. Anytime before the batter has made contact with the ball or has attempted a run or the ball has passed the stumps. Abdullah, I'm not sure if you give the wicketkeeper a heads up or if you just wait to call the no ball.
No, we're similar, Tom. Proactive umpiring. I do try to work with the players, and inform them that they are getting close. And after informing them, if they do persist, then you can go into action. But I try to speak to them, try to manage it on the field. And usually they appreciate it. If you do say, keeper, your hands are coming close to getting in front of the stumps, it's going to be a no ball, stay behind. They usually, you get the reaction, thank you, Umpy, thank you. I'll get back a bit. Players appreciate it if you do try to work with them instead of just going into action. Over, Tom.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I follow the same. I also try to be more consistent as well. So it's not I'm doing it only for the one team. I'll be doing that if that happens with the other team as well. Similarly, to the close to the front foot no ball, if the bowler is approaching, I'll be proactively letting him know that he's approaching. But I'll be also consistent and loud so that everyone can hear what I'm warning about, giving a warning about, and being consistent. But just wanted to get your thoughts on that. So I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Yes, Sandeep. So I'm slightly different. I try to do it more. What's the word I'm looking for, Tom?
Discreetly.
More discreetly. That's the word I'm looking for. So at the end of the over, or if I get it, I'll go whisper in the keeper's ear. I wouldn't be loud and let everyone know, keeper, your hands are close to being in front of the stumps. If you're going to do it again, I'm going to call and signal no ball. I'm much more discreet when I do try to communicate with the players. Similarly with the front foot no ball, I wait for the bowler to come past me and I'll whisper in the bowler's ear, bowler, you're getting close, you're tight on the front foot. I try not to. There are times where you do need to let everyone know what you're doing, but there are times where if I do try to help the players, I do it discreetly. I don't know if you do it differently, Tom.
On those 2 points, I'm also discreet, Abdullah, because I think the issue with being loud about it is that if you miss it at some point during the match, then the players will remind you that earlier in the morning you were so focused and you were telling the whole world that the keeper's gloves are close to the stumps. But now this keeper is even closer to the stumps, but you're not saying anything or you're not being heard as saying anything. So I think to safeguard yourself from being told that you are biased, and maybe getting involved with one team but not getting involved with the other team, I think it's safer to do it discreetly, Sandeep.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's something different that I have a practice about. Initially I had this practice of, whispering to the bowler while he's passing by or the keeper while at the end of the over and so on. But then learn that, if it is a televised game, then again, I mean, umpires talking to the bowlers or the players, not loudly enough to know others what they are talking about, probably may not be taken in the right way. I don't know. I don't know. I just as a practice and to be very fair about the communication with all and everyone, open and clear. That's how I'm thinking about.
Good, each to his own. If it works for you, Sandeep, no problem.
Yep. All right.
Next hand
Thank
up
you.
is Abhishek. Abhishek, please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours.
Hi Tom, hi Abdullah. My question again is from the topic when a no ball is called. I think Abdullah mentioned in it in his session that a batsman is standing in a normal position and ball passes over his head. As per law, it is a no ball. Right? But in modern day cricket, in limited overs, we see that it is always called a wide. So, are there any changes to the modern games laws? Because there is a difference between a white ball and no ball. A no ball is always followed by a free hit in limited overs. So, I think as per law, what Abdullah said, that ball passing above the head is no ball.
Yes, Abhishek. The law calls it a no ball, and most playing conditions call it a wide. I know in England there was a competition that a bouncer above head height was called a no ball, and very recently, that it might still be the case. I'm not sure, but certainly sometime after COVID, I remember watching a match, a limited overs match in England, where a bouncer over head height was called a no ball, and that was the first bouncer of that over. So it wasn't multiple too many bounces bowled in the over. It really is all up to the competition owners who decide on playing conditions, whether they want it to be a no ball or whether they want it to be a wide. Maybe somewhere along the future that law will be changed into a wide, but up to now, it still remains according to law. If a bouncer goes over head height of a striker standing upright at the crease, call and signal no ball. And remember that there are no free hits in law. So it's just one extra delivery and one run added to the total as per law. I hope that answers your question, Abhishek. Next, next hand up is Ali Ahmad Gul. Ali Ahmad, please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. Okay, Ali, I've had to mute your microphone because I'm getting a very messy signal coming from your end. Abdullah, can you confirm that you also heard a blaring sound rather than a voice?
Yes, Tom, also a blaring sound.
Okay, so Ali, if you can maybe please type your question into the chat box and we will read it there. Last question in the chat box from Abe is on the wide ball. Is there a standard measurement guideline for marking wide lines? Yes, Ali. In limited overs cricket around the world, as I showed you, actually it was Abdullah who showed us earlier in this course a picture of the creases at JB Marks Oval. I'm going to share my screen and show you that particular crease, and I will take you through the measurements. These measurements are not in the law book. They are not part of Cricket South Africa's level 1 course because they are playing conditions for limited overs cricket. But to answer your question, Abe, we will have a look at the offside wide guidelines. And here they are. They are 43.18 centimeters from the inside edge of the return crease to the inside edge of the offside wide guideline on both ends. So 43.18 centimeters from the inside edge of the return crease to the inside edge of the offside wide guideline. I hope that answers your question, Abe. That is the measurement for limited overs offside wide guidelines around the world. I do not see any more questions in the chat box. Ali Ahmad Gul's hand is still up. Ali, do you want to unmute your microphone and try one last time to ask your question, or you've typed your question in? Okay, here we go. Controversial question coming up from Ali. Can you guys tell us about the Surya Kumar catch of David Miller in the World Cup T20 final? Most of the experts state that the original boundary was touched by the fielder and the fielding banner was pushed far away. Ali, we covered this in detail at the start of a level 2 lecture during the World Cup. It was the Monday after the World Cup final where we had a lecture, and we took, myself and Abdullah, over 30 minutes to talk through that catch. To quickly answer your question, there was no boundary white line marked. Okay, what you see, or what those so-called experts thought they saw, was sweat marks of where the boundary cushions were, maybe for the previous game, because remember that all World Cup stadiums were used for 3, 4, maybe 5 matches. So there was not a white line marking the boundary. So the boundary cushion was the boundary. And so the pertinent question is whether or not Surya Kumar Yadav actually touched the cushion while he was in possession of the ball. Some camera angles and some zooms show that there might have been the slightest touch with the corner of his foot on the smallest part of the boundary cushion, but nobody can be 100% sure. So the record books tell us that India won the World Cup final by beating South Africa, I think by about 5 runs. And that is what we need to take away from that particular match. However, what I will do is I will paste the link to that lecture in the chat box, and you can all have a watch if you haven't seen it before. And you can tell us if you think Surya Yadav, Sky, let's call him Sky, if he touched the boundary cushion or not. Right, Abhishek Singh. In case of unusual bowling run-up, what if the back foot is in front, grounded beyond the popping crease, and front foot behind the popping crease? I'm trying to figure out how that would be possible, Abhishek.
Tom, I think it is possible. Bowler may not have a proper run-up, so it tends to walk to the popping crease and try to bowl, and he release the ball with his front foot grounded, not well within the popping crease, but it is suppose the case of a right-hand bowler, and the right leg goes over the popping crease, and then he release the ball, because now the conditions are differently met. Your front foot is well within, your left foot is, it is not going beyond popping crease, and your right foot is not crossing your this return crease either. In that case, I think it should be a no ball, but that is clearly mentioned.
Abdullah, can you picture this scenario where a right-hander's right foot, which is normally his back foot, is past the popping crease, but the left foot is behind the popping crease? I can't really picture it.
I can't picture it either. I've never seen back foot past the popping crease and front foot not past the popping crease.
In case of slower bowler, it is possible. Okay, I will try to make a sketch out of this.
So Abhishek, I think you do find some bowlers, I think Junior Dalla is an example of a right-footed bowler whose right foot is actually his front foot. So I think the definition of the front foot is not the foot opposite to your bowling hand. It is the furthest foot forward in your bowling action before the release. So
Okay.
I would call it a no ball because I don't consider the left foot strictly to be the front foot for a right-handed bowler. I consider the foot furthest forward when the delivery is bowled to be the front foot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I also think this should be the case. At the time of delivery, the whichever foot is in front, that should be considered as a front foot.
Correct. That would be my logical thinking. I don't think the law describes it in any way or defines a front foot. But by definition, the word front means in front, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I hope that clears that question. Ali Ahmad asks, it's been over 2 hours, but my coffee cup hasn't emptied yet. Ali Ahmad, it's called a bottomless cup of coffee. And it helps me get through these lectures. That seems to be the last question in the chat box. Ali Ahmad, is your cup of coffee helping to keep you awake? I assume that you are. Where are you based, Ali Ahmad, if I may ask? Thanks for joining us for the rest of the for the entire lecture. I will answer the last question in the next lecture. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have gone 50 minutes over time. Your interaction and your attendance is very much appreciated. We will meet again, same time, same place next week, Monday, same meeting link. And we will be going through laws 24 all the way through to 31. We look forward to meeting up once again. Have a good week further. Thank you and good night.
Thank you all. Good night.
Yes.